The school was buzzing with energy that morning, the kind of energy that comes when everyone knows something unusual is about to happen. Students whispered in corners, some laughing quietly, others trying to guess what would take place. The hallways smelled faintly of polished wood and chalk dust, and sunlight poured through the tall windows, casting long patterns on the floor. Everyone knew the headmaster liked to create little spectacles from time to time, and today was no different. The boy sat at the back of the classroom, quietly keeping to himself as he often did. He was not the kind to boast or draw attention, preferring instead to slip through the day unnoticed. His mind often filled with music and notes he practiced in secret. The piano in the school music room was his favorite place, though he rarely played in front of anyone. He had always loved the way the keys felt under his fingers, the way the sound could fill a room and touch someone without a word being spoken. Music was his safe place, a world where he could be himself without judgment. Today, however, was going to challenge everything he had kept private. The headmaster had announced a special assembly in the auditorium. Students filed in, taking seats in neat rows, some excited, some nervous, and a few with clear mischief in their eyes. The headmaster, tall and imposing, stood at the front, his eyes scanning the crowd with a mix of curiosity and authority. He enjoyed these moments when he could stir a reaction, and he had clearly set his sights on the quiet boy at the back. As the murmurs of the crowd grew louder, the headmaster raised his hand and silence fell over the room. There was a slight tension in the air, a mix of anticipation and anxiety. He smiled, a small, knowing smile, and then called out the boy's name. The boy froze, his heart beating faster than it ever had before in school. Whispers spread like wildfire. Students nudged each other, some laughing quietly, others wide-eyed with curiosity. The boy felt a wave of panic. He had never been called out in front of the entire school like this. His mind raced as he wondered what could be coming next. The headmaster gestured toward the piano at the front of the room. It was polished and gleaming under the bright lights, the black and white keys inviting yet intimidating. "Play something for us?" the headmaster said, his voice calm but with a hint of teasing. "Let's see what you can do." A nervous laugh rippled through the audience. Some students whispered that the boy would surely fail, that this would be a moment to mock him. The boy's hands trembled slightly as he made his way toward the piano. Each step felt heavier than the last, and he wished he could disappear into the floor. He could hear the soft giggles and the rustle of students shifting in their seats. His chest tightened, and for a moment, he wanted to turn back, to retreat to the quiet corners of the school where he felt safe. As he reached the piano, he placed his fingers lightly on the keys, feeling their smooth surface. The audience waited in silence, a few faces showing curiosity, others amusement. The boy took a deep breath, reminding himself that this was just another moment, one he could get through. He closed his eyes briefly, thinking of the afternoons he had spent alone, playing melodies that no one had ever heard, and a small spark of courage flickered inside him. The headmaster leaned slightly forward, watching intently, clearly expecting a clumsy performance or a nervous blunder. The boy's fingers hovered over the keys, hesitant, unsure where to begin. He took another breath, this one steadier than the last, and pressed a key. A single note rang out, soft but clear. It was not perfect, not elaborate, but it was enough to silence the initial murmurs of the audience. Encouraged by the sound, he started to play a simple melody, something he had composed in his free time. The notes flowed, tentative at first, then with more confidence. He could feel the music rising within him, filling the auditorium with a warmth that had nothing to do with the stage lights or the audience's gaze. It was just him and the piano, and for the first time he felt a strange sense of calm amid the nerves. The students began to notice the unexpected quality of the music. Whispers of surprise spread through the room. The melody was beautiful, far beyond what anyone had imagined the quiet boy could produce. Faces that had been smirking moments ago now showed amazement, and a few teachers exchanged impressed glances. The headmaster's eyes widened slightly, the teasing smile fading as he realized that this was no ordinary performance. As the boy continued, his confidence grew. Each note, each chord, flowed naturally, as if the music had been waiting for this moment all along. He forgot about the audience, the headmaster, and the teasing whispers. It was only him and the piano, and the sound he created seemed to fill every corner of the auditorium. The room was silent except for the music. A collective breath held as everyone listened in awe. By the time he reached the end of the piece, the final note lingered in the air, a soft echo of what had just been played. There was a moment of stunned silence. Then the audience erupted into applause. The sound was overwhelming, a mixture of surprise, admiration, and joy. The boy's heart raced, but this time with pride rather than fear. He looked up, meeting the headmaster's gaze, and saw genuine amazement there, a rare sight from someone who often used ridicule as a tool. For the first time in a long time, the boy felt seen, not as the quiet student at the back of the class, not as someone to be teased, but as a person with talent and courage. The applause continued, filling the room, and he allowed himself a small, shy smile. It was a moment that would stay with him, a memory of fear transformed into triumph, and the beginning of a new chapter where he could no longer be underestimated. The boy stepped away from the piano, feeling lighter, freer. As the audience's applause washed over him, the headmaster nodded, a hint of respect in his eyes, and the boy realized that sometimes, the very moments meant to humiliate could become the moments that reveal one's true strength. It was a lesson not just for him, but for everyone present. Talent and courage often lie where they are least expected, waiting for the right moment to shine. After the assembly ended, the boy walked slowly through the empty hallways, the echoes of applause still ringing in his ears. His hands tingled from the performance, but not from nervousness. This was a strange, new feeling of pride. He had always known he could play, but to show it in front of the entire school had been terrifying. And yet, he had done it. His mind kept replaying the notes, the way his fingers moved effortlessly over the keys once he found his rhythm. It was as if the piano had taken over, and he had only been the vessel for the music. The corridors were quiet, the classrooms empty, and the sunlight streaming through the windows seemed to shine just a little brighter on this ordinary day that had turned extraordinary. Students had already gone to their next classes, and a few teachers lingered in the hall, exchanging quiet smiles. The boy passed by them, feeling both the weight of attention and a newfound sense of confidence. He realized that for the first time, people were seeing him not as the quiet, invisible student, but as someone who had a gift. Even though the performance had gone well, he couldn't shake a lingering nervousness. What would people think tomorrow? Would they tease him less or perhaps more, now that they had seen him in the spotlight? He had experienced fear before, but this fear was different. It was the fear of being truly noticed, not just glanced over, but really seen. It was unsettling yet thrilling at the same time. Meanwhile, word of the boy's performance had already started to spread. Students who had been indifferent now whispered excitedly to their friends, recounting the story of how the quiet boy had taken the stage and filled the hall with music. Some expressed disbelief, while others tried to downplay their amazement, pretending it had not been so impressive. But there was no hiding the truth. Everyone had been shocked. In the days that followed, the boy found himself walking through the school with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Students would glance his way, some smiling, others clearly impressed. A few would even nod in quiet acknowledgement as he passed. Teachers would offer brief compliments, and the headmaster would sometimes stop him in the hallway with a raised eyebrow and a subtle nod of approval. The boy realized that the performance had changed something fundamental about how people saw him. Despite this new attention, the boy remained grounded. He didn't seek out the praise, nor did he let it inflate his ego. He continued to practice in secret, just as he had before, letting the music be his private world, his escape and his joy. But now there was an awareness that what he did mattered to others, and that was a strange feeling. It was as if the world had opened a small window for him, allowing others to see a side of him that he had always kept hidden. One afternoon, he found himself back in the music room, alone, except for the faint sound of wind rustling through the trees outside. He sat at the piano, fingers brushing the keys lightly, testing the familiar textures and sounds. Today, there was no audience, no expectations, only the music and the quiet hum of the room. He played a few simple melodies, letting them drift through the space, and for the first time in days he felt completely at peace. Music was not just about showing talent, it was about expressing what he could not put into words. Back in the classrooms, the headmaster began to notice subtle changes as well. The boys' peers, once quick to tease or overlook him, were now more cautious around him. There was a newfound respect, even if unspoken, and a quiet curiosity that followed him from room to room. The headmaster realized that sometimes, his own attempts at teasing could lead to unexpected outcomes. In this case, the boy had turned fear into strength, and admiration had replaced ridicule. The boy's confidence began to grow slowly, not in arrogance, but in a quiet understanding of his own abilities. He realized that playing the piano had taught him more than just music. It had taught him courage, resilience, and the importance of trusting himself. Each practice session became a little more daring, a little more confident, as he explored new melodies and experimented with rhythm and emotion. The piano, once a secret companion, had become a teacher in its own right. One day, a small group of students approached him after class. Their faces were a mixture of curiosity and admiration, unsure how to start the conversation. Finally, one of them asked quietly if he could teach them a few notes on the piano. The boy hesitated for only a moment, remembering the fear and uncertainty he had felt just days earlier. Then he nodded, smiling gently. Teaching them, sharing his passion, felt like a natural next step. Music was not meant to be hoarded. It was meant to be shared. As he guided the students through simple melodies, he felt the joy of seeing others discover the music for themselves. Laughter and excitement filled the small music room, and the boy realized that being noticed was no longer frightening. It was a chance to inspire and connect, to create moments that mattered. His earlier performance, meant to tease him, had become the beginning of something much larger. A ripple effect of courage, respect, and joy. The headmaster watched quietly from the doorway one afternoon, observing the boy as he patiently taught the younger students. There was no smirk on his face this time, only genuine appreciation. He realized that in trying to create a spectacle, he had inadvertently given the boy an opportunity to grow and to lead in his own way. The lesson was clear. Underestimated individuals often hold strengths that can surprise everyone. In the days that followed, the boy's reputation grew, but not in a way that was showy or boastful. It was quiet, steady, like the slow rise of a melody that eventually fills an entire room. Students began to see him differently, teachers spoke more warmly to him, and even the headmaster occasionally offered encouragement rather than mischief. The boy continued to play, practice, and teach, finding joy not in attention, but in the music itself and the connections it created. He realized that the experience had changed him in ways he could not have imagined. Fear had become confidence, doubt had become pride, and the quiet boy who once slipped through life unnoticed had found a voice through music that could reach beyond words. Each day at school became an opportunity, not for proving himself to others, but for exploring the depths of his own potential. And so, life at school continued, but the hallways, once filled with whispers and expectations, now held a sense of possibility. The boy had learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act in spite of it. The piano had been his stage, his sanctuary, and his teacher, and through it, he discovered the power of resilience, the beauty of self-expression, and the quiet but undeniable strength that comes from believing in oneself. The days passed with a new rhythm for the boy. He walked through the school corridors with a quiet awareness, no longer invisible, yet not seeking attention either. The memory of that first performance still lingered in his mind, and he often replayed it in his head, imagining the applause, the surprise, and the moment when the hall had gone completely silent in awe. It was strange to think that a moment meant to embarrass him had become a turning point. One afternoon, during music practice, the boy felt a surge of inspiration. He had been experimenting with melodies on his own, combining simple tunes with more complicated chords he had read about in his music books. As he sat at the piano, His fingers hovered over the keys, and for the first time, he allowed himself to improvise freely. No one was around, but he could feel the music filling the room, lifting him higher with each note. The first few notes were soft, almost tentative, but then the melody grew richer, flowing with a strength and confidence he had not known before. It was a song of hope, courage, and the triumph of facing fear. Each chord he struck seemed to tell a story, one that went beyond words. He felt alive, connected to something bigger than himself, and yet it was deeply personal. The music became his voice, expressing feelings he could never have spoken aloud. Meanwhile, news of his talent continued to spread quietly among the students. A small group had formed around him, genuinely curious about music and eager to learn. They would sometimes watch him from the doorway of the music room, waiting for a chance to ask questions or try playing themselves. The boy had begun to realize that his own passion could inspire others, and he welcomed them. He guided them patiently, showing them simple techniques, encouraging them to explore the sounds, and sharing stories of how music could be more than just notes on a page. One of the students asked him why he didn't perform more often in front of the school. The boy thought about it carefully. He didn't seek recognition. He simply loved the music. But he understood that performing could be a way to connect with others, to show them the beauty of what he had discovered. So, he agreed to play at the next school assembly, but this time on his own terms, not as a challenge or a moment to be teased, but as a gift of music to his peers. The headmaster, too, began to take a different interest. The boy's performance had shown him that talent could appear in the most unexpected places. He observed quietly from the side during practice sessions, sometimes nodding or offering gentle encouragement instead of the teasing he was known for. It was a subtle change, but one that the boy noticed and appreciated. Even authority figures could learn to respect genuine skill and courage. As the boy practiced for the upcoming assembly, he also began to reflect on his own growth. He remembered the nervousness that had gripped him the first time he had played publicly. Back then, he had been afraid of being judged, ridiculed, or seen as inadequate. But now, he had learned that fear could be transformed. Each note he played, each melody he created, was a small victory, a reminder that he could overcome the doubts that had held him back. He also noticed subtle changes in his peers. Some who had once whispered and laughed at him now approached him with respect. They asked for his guidance, wanted to understand the music he played, and even tried to create their own melodies inspired by his example. It was not admiration in the shallow sense, but a genuine curiosity, an acknowledgement of talent and dedication. The boy felt a quiet satisfaction, realizing that he was contributing to something beyond himself, helping others discover the power of expression through music. As the day of the next assembly approached, anticipation grew. Students and teachers alike were eager to see him perform again. There were whispers of excitement, mixed with curiosity and speculation about what he would play this time. Unlike before, he did not feel paralyzed by fear. Instead, he felt a calm determination, a sense of readiness that came from preparation and self-belief. He understood that the performance would not define him, but it would be an opportunity to share the music he loved. The auditorium filled once more, but this time the atmosphere was different. There was no expectation of failure, no anticipation of embarrassment. The audience was eager, attentive, and quietly supportive. The headmaster sat in the front row, observing with interest and a hint of pride, knowing that this time, it was the boy's choice to perform, and the music would speak for itself. When he approached the piano, he felt a strange calm. The familiar weight of the keys under his fingers, the polished surface gleaming in the light, and the quiet anticipation of the room created a sense of focus. He closed his eyes briefly, drawing in a deep breath, and let the music take over. The first notes rang out, clear and confident, filling the room with a melody that was both soothing and powerful. The boy was no longer playing to prove himself or to overcome fear. He was playing because the music needed to be heard. The audience listened in rapt attention. The melody grew more complex, layered with harmonies and subtle rhythms that showcased not only skill but emotion. Some students leaned forward, mesmerized, while others exchanged impressed glances. Teachers nodded quietly, acknowledging the depth of talent and expression. Even the headmaster, known for his reserved demeanor, allowed a small smile to form, recognizing that this performance was something special. As the boy continued, he experimented with variations, letting the music flow naturally. Each chord, each note, was deliberate yet spontaneous, a reflection of his inner world. The piano became a bridge between him and the audience, connecting hearts without a single word being spoken. The atmosphere in the auditorium was electric, charged with a shared experience of beauty and surprise. It was a performance that transcended mere entertainment. It was an expression of courage, emotion, and authenticity. When the final note echoed and faded into silence, there was a moment of stillness, as if the entire room collectively held its breath. Then, applause erupted, spontaneous and heartfelt, louder and more genuine than anything the boy had experienced before. The boy sat quietly for a moment, letting the sound wash over him, feeling a mix of relief, joy, and fulfillment. It was not about recognition or approval. It was about connection, about sharing a piece of himself through music. The headmaster rose from his seat, clapping slowly at first, then joining in with the enthusiastic applause. He walked forward, a look of genuine admiration on his face, and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "That was remarkable," he said, his voice sincere. "You have a gift, and you used it beautifully." The boy nodded, a quiet smile on his face, understanding that praise from the headmaster was rare and meaningful. After the assembly, students approached him, eager to talk about the performance, ask questions, and share their thoughts. Some admitted they had doubted him at first, and now they were amazed at his talent. The boy listened, answered questions, and offered encouragement, feeling a sense of community and connection he had never experienced before. Music had not only revealed his ability, but had also opened doors to friendship and mutual respect. That evening, as he sat alone in the music room, reflecting on the day, the boy realized how far he had come. From the nervous student called out for a joke to the confident pianist who had captivated the entire school, his journey had been transformative. Fear had been replaced by courage, doubt by self-assurance, and hesitation by creativity. He understood that talent was not just about skill. It was about the courage to share it, the resilience to face judgment, and the willingness to connect with others through passion. He played once more, softly, letting the music linger in the empty room. Each note was a reminder of the lessons he had learned, the growth he had achieved, and the joy that came from embracing his gift. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a companion, a teacher, and a bridge to the world around him. And as he finished the final chord, he knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would continue to unfold, one note at a time. After the boy's second performance, the school seemed transformed. The hallways, once filled with whispers and casual chatter, now carried a quiet respect when he passed. Students who had once ignored him or made jokes now stopped to watch, some even asking for tips on how to play. Teachers began to encourage him, suggesting he take part in more music events and perhaps even compete in local competitions. The boy was careful, though. He didn't seek attention, and he kept practicing diligently, allowing his music to grow naturally rather than performing just to impress. One afternoon, a group of students gathered outside the music room. They hesitated for a moment before knocking softly. When the boy looked up, they asked if they could watch him play. He nodded, welcoming the company without hesitation. As he played, he noticed their faces light up with curiosity and joy. Some tapped their feet to the rhythm, while others leaned closer to watch his fingers move across the keys. He realized that music could connect people, not just through skill but through the emotion and effort poured into it. The boy began to understand the subtle power he held. His performances were no longer about proving himself, but about sharing a part of his soul. Every note he played carried a message of courage, patience, and resilience. Students and teachers alike could feel it, even if they didn't understand music deeply. It was as if the piano spoke in a language everyone could comprehend, a language of feeling and humanity. Meanwhile, the headmaster observed these changes with interest. What had started as an attempt to tease a student had led to something unexpected. He noticed that the boy inspired others not only to play music but to take risks, to step out of their comfort zones, and to explore their hidden talents. The headmaster began to consider how often he had underestimated students, assuming they lacked potential, when in reality, many simply needed a chance to shine. One day, during music practice, a teacher suggested that the boy perform in front of the local community at a small concert held in the town hall. The boy felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. It was one thing to play at school, but to perform for strangers added a new level of challenge. After some reflection, he agreed, deciding that sharing his music beyond the school could be an opportunity to grow further and touch more lives. As the day of the town hall performance approached, the boy practiced with intensity. Each day, he refined his melodies, experimenting with emotion and dynamics. He paid attention to every detail, from the flow of each chord to the way pauses could add meaning. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a medium for storytelling, a way to express ideas that words could not capture. On the day of the performance, the boy arrived early, taking time to familiarize himself with the piano and the acoustics of the hall. The room was small but warm, with wooden floors and simple decorations. Chairs were arranged neatly, and people began to filter in, curious about the young musician from the school. As he sat at the piano, he felt the familiar nerves, but they were tempered by experience and a growing confidence. He understood that his preparation, practice, and passion would guide him through. When the audience settled, the boy began to play. The first notes were gentle, almost tentative, but soon they blossomed into a rich, flowing melody. The audience listened intently, captivated by the depth and emotion of the music. Some closed their eyes, allowing the sound to envelop them, while others leaned forward, watching the boy's hands move with precision and grace. It was not just a performance. It was an experience, a connection that transcended age, background, and expectation. Throughout the performance, the boy allowed himself to improvise, letting the music carry him wherever it wanted to go. He experimented with rhythm and tempo, blending familiar tunes with his own creations. Each note seemed to resonate not only in the room but in the hearts of those listening. The audience felt the boy's courage, his patience, and his joy, and they responded with quiet admiration that soon swelled into applause. By the end of the performance, the hall erupted with clapping and cheers. The boy felt a rush of fulfillment unlike anything he had experienced before. He stood and acknowledged the audience, a shy but genuine smile spreading across his face. People approached him afterward, offering praise and expressing how deeply the music had touched them. Some admitted they had expected a nervous, simple performance, but they had been amazed by the skill and emotion displayed. The boy realized that the piano had become a bridge, connecting him to others in a profound and meaningful way. Back at school, news of his success at the town hall spread quickly. Students and teachers alike congratulated him, some in awe, others inspired to try their own talents. The headmaster, proud and thoughtful, reflected on the journey. He realized that what had begun as a playful challenge had grown into an opportunity for growth, connection, and inspiration. The boy had demonstrated that talent, courage, and persistence could transform fear into triumph. In the following weeks, the boy continued to play, practice, and share his music with others. He taught students who were curious, guided friends who wanted to explore their own skills, and performed at small gatherings when invited. Each experience added depth to his understanding of music and to his own character. He no longer feared the spotlight. Instead, he embraced the chance to connect and inspire. The piano, once a private refuge, had become a tool for courage, expression, and human connection. As the school year progressed, the boy noticed subtle changes in the culture around him. Students were more supportive, encouraging one another to try new things, to take risks, and to pursue hidden talents. Teachers incorporated more opportunities for creativity and expression in their lessons. Even the headmaster, who had once enjoyed teasing students publicly, began to recognize and nurture talent in unexpected places. The environment shifted toward respect, curiosity, and encouragement, a change that the boy's courage had helped ignite. One afternoon, after a long practice session, the boy walked through the empty corridors, reflecting on how far he had come. He remembered the first time he had been called to play in front of the entire school, the fear that had gripped him, and the way he had transformed that fear into confidence. He thought about the students he had taught, the audiences he had performed for, and the impact his music had created. It was a quiet but powerful realization. Courage, persistence, and sharing one's gift could change not only one person's life but the lives of many around them. In that moment, the boy understood that the piano had given him more than skill. It had given him identity, confidence, and a way to connect with the world. It had taught him that talent and courage could emerge from unexpected places, and that true strength lay not in hiding or avoiding fear, but in embracing it, expressing oneself, and inspiring others. The music continued to flow through him, a reminder that the journey was ongoing, filled with opportunities to grow, connect, and make a difference. And so, the boy walked forward, carrying the lessons of music, courage, and human connection with him. He knew challenges would arise, moments of doubt would return, and fear might knock at his door again. But now he was ready, not just as a pianist, but as someone who had discovered the power within himself to face fear, embrace his gift, and touch the hearts of others through the universal language of music. The boy's journey reached a quiet but profound turning point as he entered the final months of the school year. The piano, once a private refuge, had become a companion, a guide, and a bridge to the world around him. Every day, he discovered new melodies, experimented with rhythms, and played with emotions that had previously remained unspoken. Music had transformed from a personal escape into a means of communication, connection, and inspiration. One morning, the headmaster announced a special assembly to recognize the achievements of students in various fields. The boy listened quietly as names were called, wondering if his own contributions would be mentioned. To his surprise, when the headmaster spoke about students who had inspired others and brought a sense of pride to the school, he paused for a moment and smiled knowingly in the boy's direction. The words were not overly grand, but the recognition carried weight. It was an acknowledgement of the courage, persistence, and talent that had quietly changed the atmosphere in the school. After the assembly, several students approached him with excitement. They shared how much his music had influenced them, how it had inspired them to practice harder, try something new, or simply believe in their own potential. The boy listened, his expression calm but attentive. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment, realizing that the impact of his music extended far beyond notes and melodies. It touched hearts and motivated minds. The boy continued to teach music to younger students, patiently guiding them through the basics and encouraging them to explore their own creativity. Some students struggled at first, hitting wrong notes and fumbling over rhythms, but the boy reminded them that mistakes were part of learning. With gentle guidance and encouragement, he helped them find confidence in their abilities. He discovered that teaching was not just about transferring skill, but about nurturing courage, patience, and a love for expression. In the afternoons, he often stayed in the music room longer than necessary, experimenting with new pieces, combining traditional melodies with his own ideas, and discovering ways to express emotion through subtle variations in tempo and tone. Each practice session became a journey, a discovery of what was possible and how music could communicate feelings words often could not. He learned to play not just with his hands but with intention, letting every note carry meaning. The headmaster, who had initially teased him in front of the school, observed these developments with a thoughtful eye. The boy had taught an important lesson. True talent could emerge quietly and unexpectedly, and when nurtured, it could inspire others and transform a community. The headmaster began to approach students with more care, looking for hidden abilities and encouraging them rather than resorting to ridicule. The school environment shifted subtly, embracing curiosity, respect, and the courage to try, learn, and grow. One day, a local music festival announced an opportunity for young musicians to perform. The boy felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Performing outside the familiar school environment was daunting, but he also saw it as a chance to share his music with a wider audience and continue to grow as a musician. After careful consideration, he decided to participate, preparing diligently for the event. In the weeks leading up to the festival, he practiced tirelessly, refining his pieces and exploring new ways to convey emotion through the piano. He focused not just on technical skill but on expression, on the feeling behind each note. He experimented with soft and loud passages, with slow and fast tempos, discovering how subtle changes could alter the impact of a melody. The process was demanding, but it filled him with purpose and a sense of anticipation. When the day of the festival arrived, the boy entered the hall filled with other young musicians and their families. The atmosphere was vibrant, buzzing with excitement, and a bit intimidating. Despite the nerves, he felt prepared. He reminded himself that music was not about perfection but about connection and expression. Stepping onto the stage, he took a deep breath, let his fingers touch the keys, and began to play. The audience was immediately drawn in. The melody was clear, expressive, and deeply moving. The boy's music carried a story of courage, growth, and resilience. People listened with rapt attention, some closing their eyes to fully absorb the emotion, others leaning forward to watch the precision and skill of his fingers. The room was filled with a shared experience, a connection created purely through music. As the performance progressed, he allowed himself to improvise, blending composed pieces with spontaneous variations. Each note seemed to resonate with the audience, evoking smiles, thoughtful expressions, and even a few tears. The boy felt a sense of unity with those listening, a profound connection that transcended words. He realized that the music he created had the power to move hearts, inspire courage, and evoke emotions that were often left unspoken. When the final note faded, the hall erupted in applause. The sound was overwhelming but joyful, and the boy felt a wave of accomplishment and satisfaction. It was not simply about recognition, but about knowing that his music had reached others, that his courage to play had created a moment of shared humanity. He stood, nodded humbly, and accepted the applause, feeling a quiet pride in the journey that had brought him here. After the festival, the boy returned to school with a renewed sense of purpose. He continued to practice, teach, and perform, understanding that his music was both a personal passion and a means to inspire others. Students approached him more openly, seeking guidance not only in music but in building confidence and pursuing hidden talents. Teachers encouraged creative exploration in classrooms, and the school culture continued to evolve, embracing curiosity, courage, and respect. The headmaster acknowledged the boy's impact in subtle ways, through words of encouragement, recognition during assemblies, and by creating opportunities for other students to showcase their abilities. The boy realized that his initial challenge, meant as a playful tease, had transformed into a lesson for the entire school. Talent, courage, and determination could emerge quietly and unexpectedly, and when nurtured, could inspire a community. In quiet moments, the boy would reflect on his journey, from the fear of being singled out, to the courage of performing in front of peers, to the joy of sharing music with wider audiences. He had grown in ways he could not have imagined. The piano had been more than an instrument. It had been a teacher, a companion, and a bridge to others. He understood that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it, and that true strength often revealed itself in the quietest, most unexpected ways. The boy's story became a quiet inspiration in the school. Students learned that talents might lie hidden, waiting for the right moment, and that encouragement, practice, and persistence could bring them to light. Teachers discovered the value of nurturing abilities, recognizing that even the quietest students could leave lasting impacts. The headmaster, once known for playful teasing, understood the importance of guidance, patience, and the potential for students to surprise even those who think they know them best. Through it all, the boy remained humble and dedicated. His focus was on music, on growth, and on sharing his gift with others. The applause, recognition, and admiration were secondary to the joy and fulfillment he found in playing, teaching, and inspiring. He had learned that true success was not about impressing others, but about discovering and embracing one's own abilities, and helping others do the same. As the school year came to an end, the boy sat at the piano one last time in the quiet music room. The sunlight streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. He played a melody filled with gratitude, reflection, and hope for the future. Each note was a testament to the journey he had taken. From fear to confidence, from hesitation to courage, from isolation to connection. The music echoed softly through the empty room, carrying a sense of completion and promise. And as he finished the final chord, he realized that the piano, his music, and his courage would continue to guide him. No matter the challenges or uncertainties ahead, he had discovered a power within himself that could transform fear into triumph, solitude into connection, and talent into inspiration. The boy walked away from the piano that day, not just as a musician, but as someone who had learned the value of courage, resilience, and the quiet strength that comes from believing in oneself and sharing one's gift with the world.